Hello, my name is Josh Dickson. I'm a cradle Catholic. My story is one of obedience, pride, prayers, and miracles. I was born just across the Boise River at St. Luke's Hospital. My parents went to church on Sundays and ensured that my siblings and I received the sacraments. I was baptized as an infant, received my Holy Communion and reconciliation in second grade, and last but not least, I received confirmation in 11th grade. With all the boxes checked, I really thought I knew my Catholic faith, and it seemed insignificant. In truth, I'd been sacramentalized, not catechized. I could go through the motions, but it was meaningless. So after my parents were obedient to God by bringing me up in the faith, my pride allowed me to walk away without a second thought. Why did I need God anyways? The best way to describe my belief was an indifferent agnostic. I participated in the party scene and became a father at the old age of 19. Thankfully, my parents raised me with a good work ethic. I was hired by a local corporation, and through many hours of overtime and hard work, I had made a decent living. This was a double-edged sword. Sure, I was able to provide financially for my daughter, but I was not truly present and attentive to her needs, thanks to my favorite idols: football, work, and partying. Don't get me wrong, I would attend school events and help her with homework just to safely say I was a good guy. I met my wife at the age of 24. After being married for a few years, I was promoted, which allowed my wife to stay home with our children. This decision put immense pressure on me as the sole provider for my family. My anxiety increased and bouts of depression deepened. Our finances started to unravel, and I was using porn. Both issues created a huge divide between me and my wife. Our children also began to resent me because they were getting older, and they started noticing my idols had a stranglehold on my life, taking time from them. My parents knew I was suffering, but were not aware of the extent. I hit a breaking point at which my depression and anxiety were manifesting into real medical issues, so much so that I missed 6 weeks of work. Thoughts of suicide and wanting to check out a life were working their way into my psyche. I would drive to work on 10 Mile Creek Road between Boise and Kuna, contemplating wrecking my car. Not necessarily maybe always to end my life, but at least to check out for a few weeks with a morphine drip in the hospital. By this time, my parents had become what I call crazy Catholic. They began sharing that they were praying for me all the time, and it bothered me for some reason. It was their suggestion that I attend the upcoming 2016 Idaho Catholic Men's Conference. It was 2 months prior to the conference, and they'd informed me that my ticket had already been purchased. I was irritated because I couldn't reimburse them if I decided to back out, so I felt trapped and coerced to attend. I guess it was my mother's way of saying, do whatever he tells you. While preparing this talk, I prayed using Lectio Divina and was specifically meditating on the wedding at Cana, which is the theme of this conference. The first thing I noticed was the intentionality John had describing who was at the wedding. John chapter 2, on the third day, there was a marriage at Cana in Galilee. And he says, and the mother of Jesus was there. And then he said, Jesus was also invited to the marriage with his disciples. So everyone there was intended to be there. Looking back now, I almost can't even believe the complicated moves God had methodically made to invite me to my first conference. My parents had been praying for years that their sons would return to the faith, but nothing happened. In fact, my mom and dad had shared with me they had accepted the fact that if by some grace of God they made it to heaven, they would be praying for us to revert to the faith. In March 2012, they made a pilgrimage to St. Joseph's Oratory in Montreal, Canada, to ask for intercession at the tomb of St. Brother Andre Bresset. A surprising event happened. As my mother prayed for intercession at Brother Andre's tomb, she touched his encased heart and received the gift of tears. Some people say that the gift of tears is a consolation given to someone who received a successful intercession by a saint. Fast forward to the 2016 Men's Conference. The keynote speaker was Father Larry Richards, whose home parish is coincidentally named St. Joseph. Coincidence or not, Father Larry also had a devotion to Brother Andre and visits St. Joseph's Oratory each year. Father Larry began the conference with a prayer about letting go of anxiety and depression and instructed us to be in his presence so we could truly receive what God was saying to us that day. In an instant, God reached into my brokenness of anxiety and depression, as well as physical symptoms, and completely healed me. This was a miracle. That was the first moment when I truly believed I felt that God loved me, and he saw me as his beloved son. When I truly encountered God, I became a crazy Catholic, just like my parents, who drove me crazy. I started driving my wife and children crazy with my zealous attitude. They were thinking, who are you, and what have you done with our dad? And honestly, it pushed them away at first. It wasn't until they saw my actions align with my words, which helped significantly because nobody likes a religious hypocrite, especially children when you live that live with you. About 6 months after my initial conversion, my wife attended a Salt Night presentation at Boise State's Stuckel Sky Center, and guess who was a keynote speaker? Father Larry Richards. She was inspired to write me the following. Last night at the talk, before the bishop began his blessing of the meal prayer, he shared with his audience something that had recently come across his desk. At first, when he began reading, I thought this story sounds familiar. As he continued reading, I realized it was your story. I'm not sure when you wrote your conversion story, but it caught the eye of the bishop, and I'm so incredibly proud of the man you have become over the past 6 months. I was proud to say that that was my husband's story. It almost made me cry to think that we made it through such a difficult time and came out better than before. I hope you know how much I love and appreciate you. I admit that your first conversion, I complained a lot, and for that, I'm sorry. I'm very grateful you have found a new love for Christ. It has made you a better person for not only yourself, but for me and our children. Our home is more at peace rather than one of underlying sense of anger and frustration. I hope this weekend was everything you wanted it to be. I love you and can't wait to have you home again soon. Love, Meredith. I'll leave you with this. Have faith that God loves you and do whatever he tells you. God bless.